Diego Carlos, a big 31 years old, mate, at your bloody age. Ramos, get a grip.
Hello and welcome back to the Villa Filler podcast. I am here as always with my good friend Dan Wiseman. Dan, transfer rumour season, a lot has happened, a lot is happening, a lot will probably still happen after this. But I feel like we've got quite an exciting episode really, mate, with a few interesting players to discuss and that we've already maybe spoken about, but with new developments. But before we get into all that, mate, how are you doing?
I'm good, man. I'm very good indeed. I can't believe we're here already. Like, we're sat here recording on the eve of the Community Shield, which is, obviously known as the kind of annual curtain raiser for top division football. EFL gets going tomorrow as well, and then obviously Villa boys on their way to Dortmund. It's the final pre-season game, and we'll blink and we'll probably be sat here doing the post-match from West Ham in no time. It's crazy. Like, I felt like the kind of gap between the end of the football season and the Euros felt like quite a bit of time. But the gap between the Euros and the start of this new season, I don't know if it's because we've had the Olympics, which I've been watching a lot of, plug the gap and stuff like that, but it just feels like it's come around so quickly, and it feels like for the Villa, there's still so much to try and wrap up before a ball is kicked, so that you imagine that, even by this transfer window, in terms of the names that we're looking at, it could go right down to the wire.
Absolutely, mate. So much has happened, so much is yet to happen, and I feel like actually, should we start with Jhon Duran? Because I think this is the last sort of thing that you and I properly discussed at length, really, wasn't it, mate? Was the saga, the sort of it has seemed for weeks now that Jhon Duran will leave Aston Villa and he would be going and joining West Ham, and then we sort of get ourselves in this Mexican standoff between them and well, Borussia Dortmund, I guess, are involved, aren't they? They sort of dangled the carrot of, look, if you don't accept our offer, we'll go and get Niklas Füllkrug, which I thought at the time there is no way that they are calling our bluff with Niklas Füllkrug, and now here we are, mate. We are, I don't want to say left with Jhon Duran because it's seemingly all been done on our record, really, mate, hasn't it? We have set a price, and we've indicated that very clearly to West Ham, and they haven't met it. So I guess we've both called each other's bluffs, but here we are now, mate, with seemingly a more settled Jhon Duran, who may perhaps be wearing the number 9 come the opening game of the season against West Ham.
Yeah, now that is... if we I've kind of gone full circle. We ended the last podcast trying to say you can bet your house on Jhon Duran scoring against us. That's now definitely Niklas Füllkrug. After this whole thing, I'm now even more certain that he'll score than I was that Jhon Duran would score. But you know what? I think it's kind of one where I'd love to know what deals that the club anticipated in terms of outgoings would happen this summer. I think I'd love to know whether we kind of had an inkling, whether Diaby, whether W.S. Luiz, even someone like Amari Kellyman that we got a decent fee for, just kind of which of those deals was on our radar, and had the Jhon Duran deal been the first up, had that been the W.S. Luiz deal or the Moussa Diaby deal, whether we would have treated these negotiations slightly differently and that we would have been more inclined to sell. I think the club is now, given the amount of business that we've done in terms of outgoings, the club seems to have completely flipped its stance, whereby a few months ago, we were dreading the thought of PSR. And you now imagine that the club's books look quite strong considering the amount of money that we've been able to bring in this transfer window, which has probably enabled us to be sat in a relative position of strength on Jhon Duran, to hold on, to not be kind of swayed by his own efforts to make this happen on Instagram Live, to hold to our principles and say, no, we have our price. We're not going to let his agent, play these games and dictate that for us. This is how much you pay to get him, and if you're not willing to pay it, you can look elsewhere. And so West Ham have gone and done. There was an interesting couple of reports that said that the Füllkrug and the Duran deal weren't exclusive. I can't see that being true. you imagine that it's a kind of either or situation, especially considering, they're relatively, I'm hesitant to generalize and say that they're similar profiles because I don't actually believe that they are. But I think, when you consider how different they could be, they're probably just too similar to spend upwards of £60 million on it in one window. And so, yeah, I think Villa are able to kind of sit here now and be like, no, like, we're not going to be messed around here. Be interesting to see as we go into the season whether Duran puts out an apology, what excuse me, what kind of Jhon Duran we get this season. And ultimately, as you say, is he more settled? Like, is this it now? Like, we want him to dial in. And look, like, Villa fans, we understand that this is a young kid. I think Villa fans generally have an understanding that his agent may not be the best guy in the world. And if Jhon Duran locks in, holds his hands up and says, you know what, I messed around, I'm sorry, I'm the number 9 this season, and I'm going to be all about Aston Villa Football Club until the club decides otherwise, and gets back to his business, and there's no nonsense, and he scores goals, he can turn this around quite quickly. Football fans, generally, we have very short memories, and we're very fickle indeed. It would be a hell of a comeback if Jhon Duran turns it around from here. Whether he still leads remains to be seen. Apparently, there's still offers from Saudi. But it looks like at least we sit here on Friday the 9th of August that on Saturday the 17th or whenever the season gets going, that he will be lining up or on the bench in claret and blue of Aston Villa.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. I think the Instagram Live happened after the last podcast that we did. So maybe some of the things that we said that could have aged a bit poorly as a result of that as well. So I know that's something that people certainly were up in arms about. And, there really is no defending what he did. I don't think he apologizes, though. I think the closest thing we get to an apology is he scores and he hits us with a Balotelli-esque "Why always me" celebration. I think that's maybe what we get. But it's going to be interesting to see. There's certainly no denying the talent that Duran has. And it's kind of interesting, as you mentioned, mate, the sort of stance that we're now able to take as a result of a lot of these sales. Like, I think it's probably like 3 or 4 podcasts ago now. You and I both said, I'd sell him for, I wouldn't buy him for more than 25 million if I were Chelsea, which I think confused a lot of people. But I think given the context of the PSR and all of that was happening at the time, that's probably a fee that he realistically could have gone for if Chelsea were ever that serious in signing him. They've got 55 players now, Chelsea, on a different note. So they must have, they've drawn the line at Duran. They've gone, we don't need this guy, but they've signed 7 players since. Like, where do you draw the line?
Oh, mate. But the thing, I think, if anything, that price tag that we've set is aged quite well, right?
Absolutely.
Is he more than a £25 million player, a prospect? Absolutely. But all this baggage that seems to come with him, like, would you be willing to make him a £40 million investment? Me personally, absolutely no way.
No way. So, I think time will tell if West Ham got a good deal with Fulkrug, but I think this screams of him only scoring like 5 goals all season, 2 of which are against Villa, just because why not? And West Ham's striker curse continues. But I feel like there's a whole bunch of dominoes, mate, at the moment, isn't there? Within the sort of the striking community, reports have come out today of Dominic Solanke and his move to Tottenham, which is seemingly triggering a move for Cameron Archer to Bournemouth. Graham Bailey's been reporting that for the past week or so, stating that their interest dates back as far as June. I don't know how to feel about this one, because personally, as much as I love Cam and as much as I want this to work, I think that ship sailed, and it sailed last season. Now, he scored a fantastic goal the other night against Bilbao, but I think there's a lot of aspects of Cam's game which he needs to work on if he wants to be a striker at Aston Villa Football Club. I think this is a great deal for everybody involved. There's not been a fee that's been reported as of yet. you would hope, you get somewhere near that £20 million, if you're lucky, what Sheffield initially paid last season, Sheffield United, that is, for that deal. There's definitely potential. There's a big upside to Cam. But I think, for me at least, what it boils down to is work rate, is movement, and physicality, really. I think they're the three key areas that I think he lacks. And I would much rather go into a season with Champions League football with Jhon Duran as Villa's second choice striker rather than Cameron Archer. And I think if you were to show us this clip 18 months ago, we wouldn't believe what we're saying, because it was all about Cam Archer, weren't it? But I just think it's wrong timing, really, for Cam with where we're at the moment.
I find this really hard, mate. I find this really hard. I think I'm a bit hotter on Cameron Archer than a lot of other people, and I don't know if I'm just blinded by the fact that, like, it doesn't really feel like, I know, maybe he is at the right level, but like prolific goal scorers, like coming through your own academy, like there's something so romantic about that, and you want that narrative to just continue and continue and continue. Like I really like Cameron Archer, and I think that there are flashes like we saw the other night of just how good he can be. As you say, like at what level, I genuinely don't know, because whilst he didn't score many goals for Sheffield United last season, which, both of you and I have been quick to say we don't hold against it, because obviously the nature of that team, how poor they were, how little goals they scored. His goal catalogue was fantastic. Like, he scored some really good goals, but just probably weren't enough of them. And yeah, it pains me a little bit. And it kind of comes down to where the clubs sit on their morals. Like, if I'm Cameron Archer, he is probably the only person associated with Power and Blue that every time Jhon Duran loads up his phone and goes on Instagram Live, he must do a little celebration, because as Jhon Duran's stock internally gets lower and lower and he digs himself further and further into this hole, if you're Cameron Archer, you must be thinking that this is my chance. If Villa decide to take the high road, if there are further antics down the road from Jhon Duran, which, if you and I end this podcast, open our phones, and there's another Jhon Duran scandal, he's doing something else and he's already on a plane to Saudi Arabia, like, would it surprise anybody? Let's be honest, no. And so that would be my point if I'm Cameron Archer. Like, I think if we do give Jhon Duran the number 9 shirt, and if he gets the nod ahead of him and is Ollie Watkins Davis like backup, then yeah, I think that's his curtain call. I genuinely, even the gesture to make him the number 9, that's not me suggesting that Cameron Archer should be, but yeah, given everything that Jhon Duran has done, considering that, I think if I'm Cameron Archer, I would probably look at Jhon Duran's, I think, like, 7 goals in 50 odd appearances or 40 odd appearances or something like that. If I'm Cameron Archer, and given his record in like pre-season games, I'd probably be looking at and going, I could at least equal that. Given that I think he got 4, 5, 6 or something like that just last season for Sheffield United. I think, like, yeah, if I'm him, I could be going, I could easily get to double figures from 40, 50 games. And so, yeah, I think what Villa do next and how we handle this situation is going to be really, really interesting. Whilst I think that Jhon Duran is the better prospect, I think morally, yeah, Cameron Archer should be the number 2. But as you say, like, if there's this deal on the line, if the writing is already on the wall for Cam Archer, then it's right for him to move.
I know, obviously, with PSR and that, we do seem to be in a better place. Can we, or maybe the better question is, should we turn down, let's say, 20 mil for Cam? Because you might not get that again. That, like, there is a very real chance that, Cam stays. Cam, maybe gets anywhere from 8 to 12 games between now and January. And then all of a sudden, there isn't as much interest or I don't want to say hype, because It's not as if, coming from a bottom place finish and, as you say, a handful of goals at Sheffield United, he's exactly a hot prospect, if we're being brutally honest. But the opportunity to sell now, for me at least, almost you can't really turn it down, I don't think.
That it's in this current climate, it kills me again to have to view academy prospects like this. But that's a very good point that you made. But equally, this is only a sale that I would sanction if there is an incoming, because like Jhon Duran, I think from at least a personality point of view, has shown that he probably can't be relied on to the rate that we'd like to be able to rely on him. And so I do think that if we sell Cameron Archer, there's still a definite need to find ourselves another goalkeeper. And obviously, Joao Felix continues to kind of sit on the horizon. Whilst it feels like the journalists are still talking, it doesn't ever feel like that deal's getting any closer by the day. It still feels like we again, kind of similar to the Jhon Duran deal, we've set our bench out and been like, this is our fee. This is how much we'll pay, and we're just willing to sit here and see if whether that gets accepted. I respect the club's decision not to get brought into bidding wars, but you imagine that, as I say, we sit a week out from our first game. You can't imagine Joao Felix is going to be lining up in a claret and blue shirt next Saturday, which means that the start of the season is already going to have gone by. By that point, you're only 2 weeks away from the end of the window, and maybe that's what we're hoping for. Maybe that's the club's strategy, is that as we inch closer to the window closing, the Atleti get more desperate and they get keener and keener to ship him out, and at the end they just go, have it, that price is fine. Maybe that's the club's strategy, and if it is, it's an incredibly bold and incredibly brave strategy. But we need to cover that base, and if we do sell Cameron Archer, then we need at least another body in the striking position through the door.
Yeah, I do think it does depend on Cam, and I think we'd be prepared to go these next 2 weeks without a striker, or without a Cameron Archer, let's say, to try and force this down on our end. A lot of the reports about Felix, you've seen all the things about him training by himself and not being welcome, and Atleti fans not being very pleasant. They've sold a forward to Chelsea who I don't think I've ever heard of, if I'm being completely honest. They're signing Julian Alvarez for an astonishing, I think it's club record, isn't it? I know it can't be. I'm pretty sure Felix was a club.
Felix.
Yeah, Felix was that record. But it's around there in that £80 million mark. And they're sort of undergoing a bit of it's like a decadely rebuild, isn't it, for Atleti at the moment? So I think to fund some of their sort of signings that they've been making as well, I think this is something that they will eventually bite at. But yeah, I think this one will go right down to the wire, just given the rumour mill and again, kind of what we've spoken about before with Felix as well, is like we shouldn't hold it against him if he is maybe waiting for that better offer. We spoke about Nico Williams before. That's obviously gone cold in the weeks that have passed since we discussed that. But that's kind of the nail in Felix's coffin, really, because he wanted that Barcelona move to be made permanently. In fact, Barca they've signed Dani Olmo today as well, haven't they? So they may not even sign Williams, but either way, somebody has been signed for big money. 60 million euros, I believe, they've spent on Dani Olmo today. So the optics aren't great for Felix, and where he would want to be, but as a sort of second, even third choice, ending up at Villa with Champions League football under Unai Emery, really exciting project. It's not the end of the world for him.
Well, no, reports are kind of suggesting that we put 32 million euros on the ground for Joao Felix, and if that's us putting our stall out, then I can understand why Atleti are hesitant to accept that, to be honest with you, considering, I think they signed him for 115, 120 odd. So us kind of going for less than a third of what they paid. I know his stock isn't especially high at the moment, but you've got to think that figure, but Atleti to even budge has got to get at least past 40. I think 32 million euros. I mean, in pounds, what is that? Like 27, 28 mil. Yeah, I can totally understand their hesitance to accept that.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, but I think, it's definitely one to keep an eye out on. Diego Carlos, you talk about people, Duran, having an attitude, wanting to leave all this. Diego Carlos has been moving pretty weirdly recently, hasn't he, mate? Changing TikTok profile pictures, replying to comments about returning to Sevilla, saying, one day, all of this, a weird activity, and it doesn't come as much as a surprise. He's not been included in the past 2 matchday squads for our friendlies, and Fulham have tabled a bid of £12 million today. I think we're going to hold that for 15, and I think when you look at obviously who's been reported as coming in, mate, Lutsharel Geertruida, I'm probably butchered that name, but he is a player that I have been, I don't want to say a long time admirer of, but somebody who I've been aware of for a long time, and I'm surprised hasn't made it out of the Eredivisie just yet. But really interesting profile, very versatile, plays centre-half, plays right-back, can play midfield as well. Only 24 years old, I believe, but he's got, quite the reputation back in Holland. And when you look at the numbers, he's got the stats to back it up, mate. A really solid 89.6% pass completion rate. He's making an average of 7.94 progressive passes per 90, 2.55 progressive carries per 90. Really, really good ball playing. Very typically Dutch defender. Extremely versatile, ticks a lot of boxes. And when you think of how the back four sort of was last season, a lot of Ezri at right back, as great as he is there, I don't want to see him play there. And when I look at someone like Geertruida, who is naturally so versatile, but again, has played a lot of football at right back, this just makes so much sense and would leave us incredibly well balanced. And if we're talking Diego out, Geertruida in, I think it's not necessarily an immediate upgrade like right now, but I think we'll look in a year, 2 years' time and go, this is one of the shrewdest pieces of business that Villa could have got done.
Yeah, I think I saw a comparison today to Jurriën Timber in terms of like profile, and I really, really like that.
Yeah,
I really, really like that. Someone that's so confident playing at right back can also step in at centre back. I saw like I think it was John Townley or one of the guys that covers the Villa was saying that I made like the third most passes. Yeah, passed into the final third, 262 he made last season, which was third in the entire Eredivisie, which is pretty crazy, really, for someone that's playing centre back and right back. Fourth most progressive passes in the league. And I know it's easier to make a progressive pass when you're playing in defence because it's a lot easier to go forward than it is to go backwards. But very kind of speaks to the type of player that he is, and I think profile-wise it checks in. On Diego Carlos, Jhon Duran's age, and at that age, how susceptible and vulnerable you are to agents and people bending your ear and kind of forcing you to act a certain way. And we've all done stuff at 18, 19 that we weren't particularly proud of, and so I can kind of excuse him. Diego Carlos, a big 31 years old, mate, at your bloody age.
Ramon,
get a grip. Changing your TikTok profile picture like in BVM. Get a grip. Sit yourself down. Look in front of the mirror. You are a grown man with a wife and a family, and you're sitting there trying to throw it into a former club. If you want to leave, get up there and stay with your chest, big man. I respect that way more than these silly little social media games. He's turned up to these pre-season classes looking very educated with his glasses on. He looks very intellectual and very smart. And I can't help but think that perceived intelligence definitely went out the window. And I know that, I see that he's got this little Instagram broadcast group going. Some fans kind of go crazy for it. And all I do is kind of sit here and think, if you genuinely believe that Diego Carlos is the one running those social channels, I hate to break it to you, but he's definitely not. And so I know the players don't necessarily have control over their social media channels. I know that it may not even have been Diego Carlos that changed his TikTok profile picture, but I mean, all the replies to comments, it's a pretty damning case of evidence that is starting to build. And so, yeah, again, if the club has a fee that we're going to hold out for, I'm quite happy now for the club to make these players feel quite awkward and have to walk through the doors at Bodymore with their tail between their legs. Yeah, a clip of Steve Bruce in that press conference where he's like, yeah. That's how I envisage like these first days of Bodymore being for Jhon Duran and Diego Carlos. And the longer that we can extend that and make them feel pretty crap, it's pretty childlike activity, the better in my eyes. But I mean, like for West Ham and for Fulham, like you see players acting like this to try and force a move. And I saw some West Ham fans like celebrating Jhon Duran giving it the irons on Instagram Live. And I'm like, that's not a good thing. You don't want players that are going to do this because he's only been here 18 months and already wants, and we've just got Champions League football. Like, we know how bad things can get at West Ham. Like, you don't want people that aren't going to be all in for the cause. And so it kind of feels the same with Diego Carlos.
Yeah, it does. It does. When you mentioned that Steve Bruce thing, the other one that came to mind was when he was like, how's the bacon?
How's the bacon? Did you see it?
How's the bacon? Did you see it? It's like, what a man. Oh, no, you're right. I mean, do you know what though? It's almost worse that someone else is doing these comments for Carlos, isn't it? Like this, you're in a circle, and obviously, like clearly reflecting how he feels, but it's all just a little bit cringy in it. And like when you are like a 31-year-old man changing a TikTok profile picture, like pack your bags, son. Come on, let's get you down to the cottage. I
think it's particularly annoying as well, like considering how like we wait and we supported his rehab, and we waited and we put him on ice, and 29, 30 years old, we could easily have looked to ship him out last season fresh up an ACL, but we didn't. We held through. We made him an integral part of our team. He can help get this to the Copa Champions League football, and to do this now, it does feel like a real middle finger, doesn't it?
It does. Diego Carlos has got you the most fired up I've seen you in a long time doing this podcast, mate.
This annoys me.
This is the most rattled I've seen you. Refereeing decisions, VAR, the BBC had you there, but nothing's stopping you now, mate. Nothing is stopping.
I'm ashamed of myself here.
No,
I mean, look, if he goes and bangs in a header from a corner against West Ham on day one of the season, this will all be forgotten, and I will sing his name. But yeah, until then, I can forgive kids is at your big age. I don't know, just that's great.
Grow up, Diego. Grow up. But no, listen. Geertruida is really exciting. We've definitely not gone into as much depth there as we may have liked to, but rest assured, this has the Villa seal of approval, guys. You guys know that we're serious about our transfer rumours. We're serious about looking at these players. So if Dan and I say we're excited about this, then hopefully you should be too. And I would hope that our opinion counts for something here with how long we've been doing these. But we want to know your thoughts, guys. Let us know in the comment section down below. If we've got any Dutch listeners, any people who are based in the Netherlands, let us know your thoughts on this as well. And let us know if you're excited. The season's almost back, and it's going to be one for the history books, mate, isn't it? It's going to be brilliant.
Crazy. Yeah, very excited, mate. I suppose the next thing is we're probably going to need an away kit for that away game, so it'd be interesting to see when we get that.
Absolutely, mate. Absolutely. And new Villa store as well. New Villa store. So I'm sure there's that to discuss. Have we even discussed the home kit? I don't think we have. It's nice.
No, I really like it. I have one currently in my basket, on the club shop with Ollie Watkins 11 on the back and the Champions League sleeve. And I perennially spend my days debating whether I can part ways with 103 quid for that. That is a moral thing that I'm currently sitting on outside of the bench for. But no, I mean, the club shop looks great. And there's this, have you seen the thing with the lion made out of bricks?
I have. A nice, easy win there.
Oh, that is, I mean, yeah, the club of Chris Heck. I mean, hey, there's a man that knows what he's doing to get the fans on board. There's a kind of Villa lion made out of bricks. I think each one of the bricks has every player to have ever captained the club on or something like that. It's quite a cool touch. Not something that I'd necessarily have in the club shop, but I mean, hey, it's
for a museum.
Yeah. Like I kind of saw it and I was like, that's great. But like outside the Holte end, next to William McGregor, like that's cool. And like, well, how do we amend that going forward? Like, is that just I did have a couple of questions, but that's just me being trivial. But no, it all looks really cool. I'm definitely excited to go and check that out. Particularly with a whole array of first, away, and third kits in there.
Absolutely, mate. Absolutely. It's exciting times to be a Villa fan right now. So, guys, let us know your thoughts in the comment section down below. If you're new, make sure you subscribe. And yeah, up the Villa.